I think I was going to add something under there anyways, so fair enough. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as with the one late item? Moved by Councillor Matheson, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. All those in favor? That passes. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest on this file? Councillor Sim?
Perceived conflict for in camera.
For in camera, okay.
Thank you.
Perceived, thank you. Anybody else? Not at this point. Okay, you can always step out and let us know if suddenly something comes to mind. Moving on to delegations. Mr. Keough, calm on down. I told you to be early. I didn't realize that. Yes, I see Director Zhao is online. Did you have anything to say quickly before we go to Mr. Keough?
Oh, sorry. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming and watching. And we'll turn it back to Mr. Keough on Yellowhead Services.
Well, that was fast. Thank you, Mayor Council, for allowing me to make this presentation to you today. I don't really have a lot to go through, although I am prepared to answer some questions. But the request for the letter of support is for a 33-unit affordable housing project, which we are intending to build on the site at Park Drive, where we built phase 1 in 2019. We had always anticipated building a second phase at some point in time, and in fact had a bit of a footprint laid out to which showed us, that we had sufficient space given the setbacks and all of the municipal and regulatory requirements. The project initially was given conditional approval, actually, probably 2 years ago, I guess now, and the facility of the project was going to be placed in Barrier. However, we had some challenges with, a host of issues, and in the meantime, we had a number of conversations with BC Housing to move the project to Clearwater. Of course, they realized that we already own the land. There was already anticipation. It was already anticipated that there would be a second project, and we certainly demonstrate the need for sure, even just with our wait list in our existing building. So we are in a little bit of a I don't want to say time constraint, although that is real. This project was approved under the previous call for proposals that BC Housing made, and we received conditional funding and conditional approval. There is a new call right now that applications are being invited to go into BC Housing in July. We don't want to go into that. We want to stay in this one. So we just want to be able to, and we have been talking to BC Housing on a regular basis, but we want to stay within that call, that funding where it has been conditionally approved already. And so we want to get this final proposal into BC Housing. We have a letter of support from Símpcwemc, obviously, who are a partner in this project, as well, hopefully, as yourselves. The project, which was initially designed for Barrier, envisioned a 16-unit space daycare, as well as our offices that are currently in Barrier Ridge School. We won't be proceeding with those, so they will be all units. There will be no other kinds of activities in the building, offices, or any YCS functions other than just strictly residential. Just to give you, I guess, a sense of the scope of the project, and I probably should grab my cell phone to to look at an email, but to be more precise. But roughly the project is about a $15.8 million project. The subsidy, the subsidy based on the number of units, and I say subsidy, the contribution, I'll use that term, it's better. The contribution based on, from BC Housing, based for the number of units, is in excess of $5 million. So that's their direct upfront contribution to lower the mortgage costs, which will be around roughly 9-point-something million. But going forward for the 35 years of the mortgage, there will be a subsidy which BC Housing will provide to the project. Now, this is unlike the last project, which there was a different program. And the last project, well, obviously the construction costs weren't as great as they are now, but the total cost was roughly almost just shy of $9 million. BC Housing made a grant to us to keep the mortgage a little bit below $4 million, which the rents were intended to support. There was no subsidies from BC Housing in that project, just simply the mortgage is covered by rents. We had obviously the good fortune of the low interest rates at that point and locking into a 10-year mortgage rate. So, and our pro forma allowed us to set those rates so that they were very affordable. If any of you know the rates there, the 3 bedrooms are less than $1,000 a month, and they go down from there to the 2s and the 1s. So the upfront contribution by BC Housing based on the number of units in the project is substantial, and then of course there'll be an ongoing subsidy as we go forward, which will cover off the deficiencies, not the deficiencies, but where rents can't cover off the mortgage. Subsidies will come in per unit to subsidize the overall mortgage payment. The structure of the housing program right now is based on sort of 3 components in the building, and some of you may be aware of this from your discussions or probably a UBCM with BC Housing. But there is a rent geared to income, which is the middle 50% of the units. There is a market-based component to which is 30% of the units, and there is a deep subsidy, which is 20% of the units, which make up the 100%. The commitment and agreement that we have with Símpcwemc First Nations is initially it was to offer 8 units so that their members could reside in the building or return to the community from areas where they are currently residing. They have done an internal study with talking to their members in Edmonton, Prince George, Vancouver, and they would like their members to be coming back to the North Thompson, to their traditional territory. Now with the expansion of the units, we could be as many as 10 units for their purposes, for the whole range of single and family as well too. And that's pretty much it. So we're hoping that you will support the project, and we would like to be able to send this proposal off in its final form to BC Housing before the end of the month with the letters of support from both Council and Símpcwemc First Nations.
Thank you, Mr. Keough. I've been previously briefed on this. I'm sure there's questions. Questions? Go ahead, our Councillor McKenzie. Councillor Mr. McKenzie. Happy birthday, Councillor Mr. McKenzie.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Keough, for coming in to speak today. I'm just curious, just to clarify, your location for that is right directly on that 30 corner? Is it right next door?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. And the current housing complex you have right now, is that all units rented out currently?
Yes, they are.
They are. Okay.
With a wait list, substantial wait list.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I believe somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to
40.
40. Wow, for wait list.
Most of those are for single unit, single bedroom. Maybe the other bit of information I'll put to you is when we developed that project, we had a couple of substantial donors support the project. One of them required that 80% of the units be for child, youth, and family with the definition of youth up to 29 and child and family. So we always wanted to keep that mixture at around that. So the demographics in phase one were child, youth, family, persons with disabilities, and some seniors. We anticipate this project will be, there's such a demand for the single bedrooms. We anticipate there will be people either, that will be seniors looking for accommodation or approaching those senior years and wanting to maybe dispose of their homes and move to this building.
Further questions?
I have one.
Go ahead, Councillor Sim.
Oh, no.
Sorry, Councillor Bratton, Councillor Fizzle, Councillor Matheson.
The deep subsidy you say is 80% in the current building?
No, I'm not sure if I explained that properly. There is no subsidy in the current buildings.
Okay.
The funding formula was an upfront grant from BC Housing, was about 4.4 million by the end of it. And that grant, we have committed that to continue to run an affordable housing building for 35 years. If we default on that, we have to pay that back. We have no intention of defaulting on that commitment. So the mortgage that we carried to cover off the remaining the construction costs was just slightly under $4 million. So that's our current mortgage on that building.
I see.
This program has subsidies, which is pretty typical for BC Housing in other communities. Yeah.
I was relating to that. Sorry, I misunderstood. As to the people living in the building, I thought deep subsidy meant low-income families.
It does.
Is what that would relate to?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the actual amount of rooms or units for highly subsidized families? Or
so, if I can say this, and again, the pro forma, we're working on it now. The deep subsidy is anticipated to be a rent that could be met, say, by somebody getting a shelter portion of disability benefits.
okay.
Okay, which is sort of what we did in the previous project. We were slightly above that, but we wanted to make it affordable because that's what affordability is. So the rent geared to income. So if I'm making, let's say I'm making $40,000 annually, the rent geared to income, it's based on a 30% of your gross income. So your annual is going to be, somebody do the math for me, to $12,000, which brings you to about $1,000 monthly rent for that particular unit, whatever that unit is, 2 or 3 or 1 bedroom. And then of course the market, and this is where we are, not to say we're struggling, but we know there's going to be, first, let me begin by saying there's no data. I can't go to a Stats Canada document and say what's the average rents for Clearwater on comparable. It doesn't exist, okay? So we have to use kind of anecdotal information that we get mostly from our internal sources, from the services and programs that we run. But so if you were to look at, say, a Kamloops or Williams Lake, they have what's called a Hills rate. And we want to try to get somewhere around 70% of that Hills rent, which is a defined rent for that particular community. We're sort of somewhere in the middle of, I guess, of a Williams Lake or Kamloops.
Currently, do you find families can reach this rent amount?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We had, like I said, the 3 bedrooms. They're beautiful bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, two full bathrooms, and they are less than $1,000 a month. Nice. And that includes, hot water is included in that as well, too. So it's very affordable.
I'm kind of monopolizing. You say that you see a trend going to need more single bedroom units?
Based on the wait list that we currently have on this building, most are for a 1 bedroom.
Really?
Yes. And it's kind of counterintuitive because we kind of thought with the first project, phase 1, the 3 bedrooms would go quickly because there were only 6 of them, I believe. There was 2 per floor. And they were the last to be occupied. I mean, we did fill them, within a, reasonable amount of time, 3 months, but the single bedrooms went very quickly, and that's what the wait list primarily is for.
one last one. There's 1 unit or 2 units for women in distress
That's in phase one.
in phase
Phase
one.
one has, we have our, I don't know if I'm comfortable
that's not
talking
the
about this,
term.
but we have a second stage housing component as part of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Frizzle, if you have any questions left.
I actually changed my question from when I originally started. Do you think you can maintain that rent with the cost that, the increasing cost of building a apartment?
Well,
this
that, let's be candid with each other. Obviously, the increase in
Yeah.
construction costs and interest rates are factors. But what happens is that brings in more of the subsidy from
Okay.
BC Housing. So if we set, let's say, we set a rate of, let's say, for example, you know, $1,050 for a 3-bedroom, and the person that's coming into that unit, let's just say is a single mother with 2 children. So the shelter portion is about $700. I don't have my social development stats with me. So there would be a subsidy coming into that for $500 from BC Housing. And then similarly for the rent geared to incomes, because if a person is working and their income is such and they're in a unit that costs this much, they can only be charged 30% of their gross income. If there's a deficiency there in terms of what the overall cost should be to cost that or a rent for that unit based on the mortgage payment and the construction costs, that brings in more of a subsidy, which is good for the community in the sense that there is subsidy money coming into the community.
That's good to
Basically,
hear.
although it's going to the bank, but
Councillor Matheson.
All answered.
All answered?
Good.
Okay, anybody else? I have one, but I'll thank you first for your presentation and all of this. I think it's a great project. What's your timeline on needing this letter of support? Because just to let you know, there's a few questions that I think we're going to have to ask of staff before we...
okay. Hoping, I think when we just talked about this last week, by either the end of this week or sometime towards the middle of next week.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that advisement. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. That looks like a fantastic project. I'm excited. Okay.
Thanks. Okay.
Have a good rest of your week. Thank you, Jack. Moving on to, now I have to find my place back on the agenda. Here we go. Adoption of minutes of council meetings. 8-1, minutes of the regular council meeting held May 16, 2023. Any errors or omissions? If not, can I get a mover and a seconder to adopt? So moved by Councillor Herring, seconded by Councillor McKenzie because it's his birthday. All those in favor? Thank you. We have the adoption of minutes of committee meetings from Tourism Wells Gray. Lots of information on there. Any comments or questions? Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Frizzle. Come on, it's your birthday.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor McKenzie. All those in favor? And those are adopted. Unfinished business, official community plan project. I would see we have this on further on our agenda anyways, so no, we don't. This is the spot. Okay, 25 to pages 25 to 119. There is an extra staff report here now.
Oh, on table?
Recommendation, a series of recommendations, but one that we can have a discussion about right now. And I realize a lot of you are reading this giant chunk of OCP for the first time in a long time.
No, they had homework.
They had homework. Okay, they had homework. So most of you already read this. I lived the dream of putting it together the first time, plus a couple of updates on it. Discussion. Councillor Herring.
I like the idea of a full rewrite at this point. I think there's enough in there that needs to be explored. I think we're probably ready for an update. That's where I'm standing.
Thank you. Any further? Others? I'm in agreement with Councillor Herring. I'll just say that. But if you go
I
ahead.
just wanted to say, I think our culture has changed a lot too. A lot of things that are important to us now weren't as important then, and I think that needs to be reflected in the OCP. Some things need to be taken out, some things need to be added.
Yeah, Councillor Sim.
At our strategic plan, Christina Benty had suggested looking at our service levels before we go to OCP, and I didn't know where that fit into the conversation or where the rest of council saw that, and was that important or not?
Mr. Thomas, do you want to speak to that? Because I think it was also discussed we could do parallel.
Sure. Service level review is going to be a long process for any community to go through. Each service that we provide would have to be reviewed in detail for bylaw policy currently in place, what it currently costs, whether we are delivering the services as we had envisioned in those original documents. And then council can assess if they are meeting council's expectation or if council wants to change those service levels and the associated cost, and then identify a person responsible for implementing. Over that time, you can have a parallel process where you're revisiting the OCP with the community, and at the same time, council and staff are reviewing the individual bylaws to meet council's direction for service levels. So you could have as many of those service review going on at the same time, as well as your OCP.
Thank you. Do you have a further?
I do, and it just goes to some of the discussions that we have, although we could do sort of the full review. Some council members around this table have also asked, to get the information, what are we lacking? Or do you think that would be addressed in the full review?
Yeah, I think that for me, that's why I want to do a full review.
Okay.
I want to do that comprehensive community conversation, CCC, on this, so that we actually go out in the community, because a lot of this stuff, the original process took, I believe, over 3 years to complete. It actually got dropped completely from the agendas for months, if not a year, while it was rejigged. And I think it's really important that we go through a wholesome process, because as many of you people have said at this table, a lot has changed and a lot has been accomplished. An incredible amount has been accomplished. So maybe our direction, our priorities are somewhere else now, but we need to hear that from the community so we know what the desire of the community is. Mr. Thomas.
As an example, I'd like to draw council's attention to page 49 of your package, which has Clearwater population history and estimates. Population is a key driver for everything: economic development, for services, for taxation. It's one of the most important variables in any community development. And the reason I brought this to your attention is the estimates developed in 2012 was for a 10-year period ending in 2022. So council and the community, by extension, needs to have a broader conversation as to where does it want to see the population change, and a lot of your policies will be structured to either enable that or prevent, depending on the direction of the community and council.
Other questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Sim.
Yeah, I think that in terms of, I was certainly in favor of a soft review, but that the more that the government keeps rolling out their housing, and even just earlier this week, I think, 40 communities that were almost mandated of what they need to do for housing. I think that this was a very timely thing to look at the full review. The landscape's changing very quickly.
47 are on the list,
naughty list.
on the quote-unquote
Yes.
naughty list, and the naughty list has a quite obvious population cutoff on it. I think the naughty list will be expanded in the future. Anyways, yes, I agree with you on that. Okay, so there are multiple recommendations here. Does anybody else have any questions before somebody suggests maybe moving forward with one recommendation? And I do not see I see development of an RFP, but I also don't see an issuing timeline on an RFP, and I actually think that's intentional, that we kind of want to just build the RFP and then wait to see as life progresses through this summer, and then we can decide when we want to issue that RFP. So it's not automatic that we're just going to put this out there. It's the actual building of the request for proposals at this point. Okay.
Just for the discussion, I do note that on page 26 that staff has put together 4 points. I don't know if you would like to see those addressed right now or in a follow-up conversation.
Yeah, I'm good, but yeah, I mean, if you're talking about purposes of, or are you talking about the ones that just council considered value full or partial
We've
review
got
of
that
the
one.
OCP? That one. Are there any specific question councillors consider a priority or appropriate to capture within the next review, such as community downtown or development? I think if we're doing a fulsome, we're going to touch on all these. And then whether it's just overarching steering committee, the way we did it last time worked, and that involved some council involvement, a couple of seats, but mostly it was the community. It was key stakeholders and people that put in their resumes to be part of the committee. I was one of those people. I was one of the people that did not have a direct role either in a community organization, but was an interested citizen at that point. I really like that idea as well, but if you have comments, anybody have any questions or thoughts on that? I think what's there is pretty good. Councillor Herring?
And yeah, just to the other point, I do think simp engagement is a great idea, as well as Cannon Lake. Just however we can get input on the plan, I think that's a key step.
For sure.
I honestly think it'll be legislated by the time we get to that.
I think that's a good point.
But yes. Further thoughts? Okay, desire to move one of the recommendations forward.
I'll move the recommendation that we develop a draft RFP for a full review, and that that council directs the oversight process for the OCP.
Okay. Okay, does that work? Okay, do I have a seconder on that? Or do you have a comment?
Also directs what, sorry?
Directs the oversight process for the OCP update project.
Is that
the second recommendation there?
To be held as a council standing
Yeah, council.
council itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
which I believe is the model of last time, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so do I have a seconder on that? Thank you, Councillor Matheson. Okay,
Who seconded?
Councillor Matheson seconds. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor? We're gonna do an OCP? Or we're gonna do an RFP and then we're gonna do OCP. Thank you. Moving along. No public or statutory hearings. Mayor's report is on table. I'll skip through the highlights. Since the last meeting, I've met with MLA Stone, Millibar, and MP Caputo. Attended a TNRD regular board meeting. Went to a fabulous C2C in Valemount. I'm sure Councillor Matheson and others will want to speak about that. Participated in the May Day parade and activities. Zoomed in on a really interesting call that I believe Councillor Matheson helped initiate with Interior Health, basically declaring Highway 5 a health hazard because of the amount of accidents. If it was a workplace, it would probably be investigated as a hazard. So that was a very interesting and powerful thing, and I'll let you speak more to that if you wish. 3 or 4 days of strategic planning, 3 for sure, and more in my brain. Honor House presentation on Tuesday, May 3rd. Very great session on wildfires and Fire Smart. Alan Westhaver, the expert on how fires start, embers is the key word there, came up and did a presentation at the high school that was somewhat well attended, but out of that came comments from a community member and a stakeholder that asked that maybe we consider the idea of talking to our fire chiefs both in and inside the region and out, and our other elected officials who are online right now, maybe do a joint statement on the importance of fire smarting in our community, because they all see it as a high risk for our community, that if we don't start doing like some of the other communities, Fernie being one of the ones that are noted in Mr. Westhaver's presentation, that we really need to get on that. I mean, we're looking at fire indices right now that are very concerning at this point. So that's something to consider, and we'll bring forward at a future meeting once we touch base with a few of those other stakeholders. Thursday 1st, I was back in Kamloops for a meeting with Mike Farnworth, Minister for Safety, on highway safety, and a whole bunch of issues like dikes and floods and other things. This past Friday, met with the YCS board and administration on 2 topics, one that was discussed here, and done a bunch of media interviews, and I believe Councillor Matheson's going to do a few more on highway safety in relation to the video by Kathy Bratton and husband, that was terrifying, So, and a bunch of other stuff. Moving on, Councillor Bratton.
Thank you very much. So I don't have a real ton to report on, but the May Day parade was May 20th, which went really well, and wanted to thank the whole community for participating and helping, and the DOC for coming out and helping set up barricades. And I have a list of, I don't know if I should go into this. You want me to not?
Want to thank people?
I want to thank people.
Thank people.
Okay. Shelley Sim was fantastic. I'm going to call her my lead controller out there. That was awesome. I had to check to make sure she was doing okay. The Jones family, Craig Wilm, Houston Andrews, Cheyenne Kennedy, Erica Rotsetter, and most of all, on call, and Valley Pride. Without Kaylin Jones spearheading all of that, this wouldn't have come off the way it did. And I was very glad to help everybody out and make it, I think it was a success. So, oh, I said that way faster. Just wanted to let everybody know Grad in Clearwater is coming up at the end of the month on, Shelley will probably speak to this, June 24th. I just came back from an Edmonton grad, so I thought I would mention it here. Be safe, have a good time, and everybody be aware that our grads will be out there. Happy birthday, Lyle. And definitely highway safety is a concern, and as I had some family members almost have their life in their hands, everybody be aware on the roads. Keep your eyes open, head on a swivel. We had a strategic planning session with Christina Benty. Absolutely fantastic, and I learned a huge ton. On to the next thing. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Frizzle.
Thank you. I attended the May Day parade. I think it was a success. I walked it, and I really enjoyed watching all the people that were alongside, and how much they were enjoying having the parade back. And I think they quite enjoyed the new location as well. So that was a fun event. The strategic planning was 2.5 days of a lot of work. I got to know a lot of the staff that I didn't know before. Got to know a lot of things. It was a great learning experience. I came out of there with new thoughts. Had a meeting with staff, the Trails Task Force, and some of council on. We did the walk on the trail, not the trail, the Dutch Lake lines. The engineer had come out and done the dots to show where it's going to change, and so it was a good visual to see where it's going to go, and we'll be talking about that later on in the agenda. And then I attended the Pride Flag ceremony here at the district office. I thought it went really well. There was lots of people here. It was a very touching moment, and so yeah, so that was good. Then I went down to the art gallery. They're having a new. They had a soft opening down there for a painter, I guess, and they're going to have a setup at the new hall at Evergreen Acres, and so it looks quite nice. They've got it all finished. Then I came back for agenda setting, and then I went off to the fire department that night and watched Wayne Wasowski receive his 25-year pin, which is really amazing for a volunteer fire department to have a volunteer do it for 25 years. And then on the weekend, as I'm sure most people know, Drake Smith is leaving. He's sold his business, and he had a going away, a goodbye event. So we went down to say goodbye to him and hello to the new owners. They're a very young family. They've got young children, and they're going to be taking on all of Kamloops and Barrier and Clearwater. So it was a really interesting, very nice couple. So yeah, so that's my report.
Thank you. Councillor Herring.
So yeah, went to the community forum in Valemont and strategic planning session. Just, other than that, not much going on. I think the roads issue, I want to add a perspective on it from a cyclist. I've definitely appreciated Bike Week this year. There are a lot of kids out there. There are a lot of people trying to ride their bikes in town, but the roads are dangerous for cyclists around here, and were a factor in there. Some of our line painting issues are contributing. I rode up Steggs Hill today and nobody knows where to drive, including myself. So there's risky situations. So if motorists can keep their eyes out and watch for cyclists and make sure that they're aware that the road is a shared space, cyclists are allowed to ride on the road surface. You don't have to put your bike in the ditch when a car comes. You're allowed to take the lane.
Excellent, thank you. That's a great, I've noticed it as well. Thank you. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Mayor Blackwell. Started off May Day Parade, I attended that. I can't thank Valley Pride enough for taking the reins over a Clearwater tradition that's been gone for a couple of years now. It was really nice to see, and I think the general consensus around town was about the same feeling I had there. It was nice to have Councillor Bratton and all other volunteers that she listed in her long list there for all the work put in. It's not easy, but it came out. I think the weekend was a success if you look around town. May 25th, 27th, I also attended the strat plan workshop with the rest of council and my staff here. And on June 1st, I attended Wayne Wazowski's 25-year service award ceremony. And other than that, that was about it for the last couple of weeks.
That was a lot. Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, it's been a busy few days, busy couple of weeks. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bratton, for that parade. That was an amazing event and took a lot of planning, and everybody that took part in it and the feedback from the community was very positive, so well done. I was with the mayor on the Interior Health Zoom about the highway crashes, and at the conclusion of them declaring it a public health emergency, we had a discussion about including Símpcwemc in the next conversation, as well as the other communities, Belmont, McBride, speaking as one voice. And that's a kind of a direct result of the meeting that we had in Belmont, you know, speaking as a community in the North Thompson as a whole. And I think that's the way we have to go forward with all of this. They are taking it up higher up the ladder. They have direct access to a lot of people in government and are very concerned, and they're taking our concerns up to a very high level, senior executive level. So hopefully something good come out of that. We have another meeting with them down the road. I participated in the strategic planning. I learned a lot. I filled in a lot of knowledge that I did not have before. It was invaluable. May 30th, I was on the Pride flag raising, which is well attended. The art gallery, the soft opening. There were a lot of people there, and it's an amazing facility. I think it could be used for events and all sorts of things down the road. And also to Wayne's 25th year in volunteerism, and it was well done. I got a great photograph of him. If we need to put it in the newsletter or something, it'd be great. I also went to a presentation at the Legion on the Honor House and the Honor Ranch, and I'm fully intend on paying them a visit at some point. It's a valuable service, and I donated some money toward it. I attended the wildfire session, and to tell you the truth, it scared the hell out of me. I've always been under the impression that it was fire and heat that burned houses down, and it's not. It's embers, and houses are burning 4 hours before the fire gets near the community. And the fire, like in Lytton, not even hit the community. It went around the community, and it was embers that burned the town down in 20 minutes. So it wasn't the fire. The trees were still green. They were still standing behind the houses, but the houses were gone. And that was an eye-opener. And it's made me look at my house now, and I took a drive around town the next day, looked at all the different subdivisions and stuff, and the amount of cedar hedges and junipers up underneath the eaves, up against windows, up against the houses, firewood stacked under decks. It was horrifying. And if we get an ember storm in this town, I'm really terrified what'll happen. So we need to get together as a community and start making these movements toward cleaning the area up, taking care of those little small things that could save our town. We could become resilient just with some simple changes around the community and survive a wildfire, from what I can see. So it would be, I think it's really advantageous that we get something going either through council or through community groups or something, that we can do those small changes to try and make this community more resilient and more able to withstand a fire. So it was really, really eye-opening. It was shocking. yeah, I'm doing weedy interviews next week on TV with CFJC TV and things like that, and ongoing. I'm sure I missed some stuff, but it's been a busy couple of weeks. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for summing up the wildfire situation. That was, if you can find Alan Westhaver's presentations online anywhere, it was at UBCM last time as well. It's well worth watching, and I will try to find links to some of those videos and post them online. Councillor Sim.
First of all, happy birthday. Yeah, I joined many of the council with the Dutch Lake viewing, the grand opening of the North Thompsons, as well as the parade. And yes, Councillor Bratton, that was just a terrific job, really engaging, and just you made sure that a wide group of people were included in every single aspect. So thank you for your extensive time on that one. And I also just really want to appreciate the fact that the district worked very quickly to do the flag raising on June the 1st. I think that that was really important and a really great day. And then also the 25-year presentation, which has also been addressed. Some of the other things is that the ground has now broken at Raft River for the outdoor classroom, so that's moving across very quickly. I was able to go to Kamloops and watch 3 of the CSS students be acknowledged as part of the District Honours Award. They were 3 friends and just quite excited about their next steps. This past weekend was Footy Fest, where we saw close to 500 players. And all their families. So if there was a lineup at Dairy Queen, you know why. Same thing with Tim Hortons and a variety of the other places. It's always really incredible the impact that these tournaments have on local business. And just again, gratitude to the District of Clearwater, the Public Works, Roger and his team. When you have that many people in the fields, we had a lot of resources that helped keep it really tidy. Mac River for just their excellent efforts. Whenever you come to town and if you've got tidy washrooms, it really makes a difference. So that was done. And of course, CUISA and their volunteer teams were amazing. It was over 50 games in 2 days. Yeah, so that's a lot of work. I've also just attended a hospital auxiliary meeting, and based on their May AGM, they are investing over $100,000 into our hospital. One of the things that they are going to be working with Interior Health on is purchasing of a new X-ray machine. And that's going to be a large purchase price, $263,000. And they are just trying to get some answers to questions from Interior Health as why that might be on an auxiliary wish list as opposed to maybe a different project for the hospital, given how much is done by the auxiliary for the hospital in other ways. So I said I would share that. And then as Councillor Bratton said, yes, CSS grad is coming up on Friday, June the 23rd. Which is great. And lastly, I just wanted to say that I've enrolled in BC Healthy Communities, an equity pilot project that they're launching, and it's sort of a 5-part series, and they're doing it as a group that they're testing it, so how that might roll out for elected officials. So there's 5 modules that have to be completed by the end of June, and based on some of that feedback, then how can that be rolled out to the larger municipal government world. So that's it.
Thank you. And that last one, I'm sure you have plenty of free time to do that in 5 modules. Anyways, thank you for that fulsome report. I would love to hear more off this meeting about the X-ray and pass it on to the hospital board chair. I think I might. Thank you so much. Moving on, item 15.1, we have the CAO report. It's a lot of pages. There is a lot in here. I hope you have 1 or 2 questions. If not, take it home and read this novel because a lot gets accomplished by our talented and professional staff and CAO and managers here. But that's a lot, and we have more coming up because we have a busy summer, including Canada. Any questions on any of this? If not, I'll leave it for you to follow up later with staff if you do. Building permit stats, 15.2. You get the long form version today. Some interesting stuff in there. You get to actually see specifics on houses and that sort of thing. and the values of the buildings, which is kind of an interesting thing we don't usually get, but it's actually nice to see that. Puts things into perspective with our own situation. Okay. Moving on, April transit sats as well. Thoughts on that, Councillor Sim?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great, and it's really nice to see that the communities in Vavenby and Little Fort are all included in this one. I had forgotten what the breakdown is for the TNRD's contribution for this service. Do we have any information on that, or is that for a later meeting?
Would you like staff to bring forward a report at a future meeting?
I'm going to just look to the mayor to see what he would like.
I think if we just get clarification if it's percentage or dollar value at some point in the future, that would be good. I don't think we need a full report.
No. I think just understanding the cost breakdown and where there's some shared costs.
Yeah, especially since we are seeing, as you pointed out, Vavenby, Little Fort Barrier. Lots of people take this, but I've taken this bus to go retrieve a truck out of Kamloops from a mechanical breakdown, ironically, looking at the reasons for cancellations. It is an incredibly valued service by the people that use it. And the Valley Connector part of it, the rest of transit within town, that's a different conversation. It's valued as well, but I don't think it sees the uptake that the Valley Connector does.
Yeah, and I think that's the purpose in just understanding how that funding is that, you know, if we've got enough data and if we've got some funding. I do know that Interior Health at one point in time was also looking at how they might be able to participate, and they were interested in our service. And because it's so well subscribed, how can we expand it, and how can we bring on stronger partnership in the funding model?
And yes, thank you. We could talk about this for a long time. There's a lot of issues related to this. Moving on, we have your annual water report, which is a legislative requirement, but if Mr. Thomas or somebody else wishes to speak to this a little bit.
The annual water report before you has been submitted on time according to our permit to operate the facilities and has been accepted by Interior Health. That concludes the two reports that we need, water and sewer. Both have been done, and they will form part of the annual report, which is coming forward to council this month.
Are there any questions on the water report? Not? Move on to new business. Under new business, 16.1, 37 East property design. Staff does not have a recommendation, but you do have a report for information. Are there any questions of staff? Comments? Who wants to go first?
That's this right here.
So there is that all the same diagram, or are those
There are different options.
different options? Okay, thank you. And there's some on this side as well, so.
Oh, gosh. Is there anything that staff wanted to share about some of these designs?
Come on up.
Yes, a few things. So when we originally cleared that property and took it to the state it's in now, at the time there was no funding to complete the park. So what we did there, we didn't fully clear the entire lot. We left the east edge because the material is so loose. We didn't want to clear right up to the property line, which is that white picket fence. And so we left a bench up top there. When 37 East came back for a walkthrough on the property, we decided that that would be an excellent spot to put the boat trailer parking. It's on Lakeview Drive. As you can see on the first two diagrams there, it's right at the top, and it keeps the boat trailers from having to make the turn off Lakeview onto the old North Thompson Highway. In the first diagram on your left there, it shows the Loggers Memorial also up on top on that bench. The second diagram shows the Loggers Memorial down in the parking lot. So the first diagram makes better use of the space. The second diagram, the Loggers Memorial, is more readily available to anyone with mobility issues. The third diagram is the one that was presented in 2021.
Sorry, just to council, you, those I haven't noticed, you have it in this package. It's behind the line painting, or line alignment. So, sorry, I just, people
Nope.
are straining to look, and I'm going, you can have it on your desk and see it in splendid color. Thank you.
May I ask a question?
You absolutely can ask a question.
This is a really stupid question, but what is the significance of the green compared to the yellow?
The green are trees.
Well, I got that. Is that grass?
Oh,
or-
in the original document that called for grassed area, which also requires an irrigation system. In the new drawings, the first, the far one and the center one, all have just plantings of drought-resistant plants and no grassed areas.
So what would the dirt be?
Pardon me?
Like, what's the ground cover?
It's ground coverage. We're trying to do it as reasonable.
Rock or
That
shavings?
could be to be determined.
Okay, I just was
The,
curious.
the critical thing right now is for us to select a design.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm taking from that this is natural grass or ground covering that's non-irrigated, and the green area is the darker green area is an irrigated grass?
It could be irrigated grass if that's what we would like there.
Okay, thank you. Sim?
So I'm assuming that with 3 different plans, there's 3 different price points.
We haven't got a price point to date.
Okay.
So the last pricing we got was a year and a half ago. As you all know, costs have risen dramatically. Once we settle on a plan, then we can get a better cost estimate.
So the original one didn't include your clever idea of excavating the top for the trailer park. So I would imagine that that would also have a cost impact.
There's a pretty good bench there now. It would need a little bit of clearing and some proper crush put down, or we could pave that section as well. However, that's quite an expensive thing. The paving on the lower parking area would be nice for handicap accessible, also to designate true parking spots. You can do it with the little curb stop curbs, but people don't necessarily follow them. Paved with lines is much better.
And just a supplemental to that, I know that in the original one, it was quite an elaborate plan because we had some street lighting, we had some stairs. Am I right that we would still have stairs and the street lighting in the plan that you've got designated with the new bench area?
We have removed the street lighting,
Okay.
just because we feel like there's enough lighting from the existing street lights.
Especially with the new lights, yes.
Yeah, and there's either a stairway or a walkway leading up to Lakeview Drive.
And then the difference between the 2 plans, so if I'm going to take off the one that you had brought forward from last year, because I think that having that crushed area is really smart. But I'm not 100% sure of the major differences between the other 2 plans. Which is the more deluxe plan?
I don't know if there is one. The biggest difference, I believe, is just the location of the Loggers Memorial.
Which is where? Which one
It's
is?
the circle thing.
Which is the pyramid shape, that would be the top of a covered structure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like the idea of the pyramid or the Loggers Memorial being more accessible to the people in the parking lot, not having to go up that trail. To me, it's an access thing.
Yep.
Other than that, I think they're,
Yep.
That's quite steep there. The stairs coming down from where you park your boat.
I'm sorry, what was it?
Where you park it. I don't know which one this is. This plan,
Is it the first drawing?
Which has the stairs?
which has the stairs by the Logger Memorial.
It
How
also-
steep is that? I'm just thinking, is there only stairs?
There's, if you're looking at the first drawing in your package for the 37 East property, there's also a pathway.
So that's the
That
1.2 meter accessible
So-
path.
so-
Slope 6.33%.
Let's go with if we can all look at the bottom right corner,
Here.
above the LC1, there is a title that says concept plan. There's concept
Plan
plan, and then there's concept plan 2,
Oh, look at that.
and park concept plan, which is the one with a lot of darker green in it. So if we can differentiate what we're talking about on those three, that would be great.
Okay. Park concept plan 2.
Yes, on concept plan 2, you would see on the trail, there is a pathway that connects the Loggers Memorial at the top.
Right. Because those lines are steepness in the grade there. It's quite steep. Accessibility.
Yes,
That's all.
it will be there are going to be stairs there. If we choose that concept plan, there are stairs. We could, if we wanted to have a graded slope, we could start a slope quite a ways back to get a proper slope that a wheelchair could get up there. But it's something that we could add if that's a concern.
Yeah, and at this point, it just there is a way to get down the street and around
But
on
they
the
still can't
sidewalk
get up to the
there as well. So that is quite a lot longer way, but also it eliminates your grade issue. But yes, I mean, I could see that would be an option to build that path as well up to the corner of the.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
It's important too to realize that if when we bring people up onto Lakeview Drive there is no proper walking path or lane or anything to get you down to the boat launch either.
Thank you. Okay, so we're talking about concept plan 2 right now. So, further questions? Comment, Councillor Herring.
Yeah, I lean towards the first park concept plan because of the extra 2 parking spaces personally, and the elimination of the stairs, which that reduces accessibility for sure.
There's still stairs.
Not in the first one.
No, this one here. LC1.
Yeah.
Because I'm deaf. Yeah. I thought you meant the actual original. Gotcha.
So you on this one, which is just labeled park concept plan with no significant dark green, there's a series of paths that connect both the Loggers Memorial and up to Lakeview Road and down to the old North Thompson Highway, as well as the 2.5 meter wide multi-use plan. So that one, as far as not having stairs and lots of accessibility, is probably the most accessible, but also noting that there's a retaining wall in order to put that Loggers Memorial at a height above the parking lot
Yes.
service. Thank you. Okay. Again, I want the Lego and a 3D model. Any further questions or comments on this one? Councillor Frizzle.
Why could we not have the Loggers Memorial where it is in this concept plan 2 and just have the pathways without the stairs? Is that an option?
We could, if we went to the left of that, we could start a handicap ramp, but it would be quite a long one. It's about a 6-foot rise there.
Okay.
So from the parking lot up to Lakeview Drive is quite a rise.
Okay, all right. That's what I need to hear so I could, this is flat.
So point of clarification to Councillor Herring, was it park concept plan, the one that you noticed had 2 extra parking spots in it?
Yes, if you look on the plan, it says parking with a number beside it. That's the number of
25.
spaces. The original plan called for 34, and these 2 options provide either 22 or 25.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Further comments or questions? And we don't have to make a decision on this today. This is for us to talk about, but if there's something that we're all feel like we're in love with, we can make a recommendation to move forward with one of these plans, if you so desire, for design.
I have.
Yeah,
I really
go ahead.
like the path idea in the proposed park one. This one. The one that I asked about the stairs.
The one with the stairs?
Where you see? Oh, there it is. Oh,
Yes, thank you. You need a highlighter? Oh,
I'm
you
gonna
got one.
circle
Okay,
it.
there you go.
There we go. I like this layout. It looks more cohesive to me. I am a little bit worried about the stairs, but they might be fine. I just need to see it in my head.
And I think as Mr. Mayor was saying, there is potential for the opportunity to extend a path at the bottom right of the diagram up to the parking areas in the future, or we could, that could be played with, I think, depending on. Councillor Frizzle.
One more question. On these two diagrams, they're showing the war memorial, and the war memorial in one is quite large space, and the other is a smaller space.
You mean the Loggers Memorial?
What are they? Yeah, whatever. Good. Reading my mind. Don't listen to what I say.
Thank you.
That's just a matter of some cobblestones around it being larger.
Okay, so it's just doing that. Okay, thank you.
The actual Loggers Memorial, the intention, it's been put in storage. The intention is to build a nice timber frame structure around it to protect it from the weather. Nothing has been finalized on that, though.
Is the Loggers Memorial the big circle? This?
It's a large piece of a 400-year-old Douglas fir tree.
It was up already, right?
It
Taken
used to
down?
be down where the cenotaph is. Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, we had to.
Ballpark.
Yeah, we had to move it because of
Running?
need to get in there for the well
Oh, yeah.
construction, among other things.
Yes.
Yeah. And
So it
preservation.
was repaired and it's in storage down at Public Works.
Excellent.
I don't know. This one's tough.
Okay. So I'm getting the general feeling that people are liking part concept plan 2 with maybe an extra path tweak.
I'm happy with Plan 2. I like that idea. It's accessible. Yeah.
Okay.
It works for me.
Yeah. Okay. Any further thoughts? Do you want to move that as move forward with plan, or Mr. Thomas further?
Does council want to put this out to the community, ask for feedback before deciding, or decide and then we put it out to the community?
Public feedback is a really interesting, good idea.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's put it out.
Okay,
See
so
what the
so
consensus is.
in Councillor Sim, go ahead.
Are you suggesting that this be put out for public once we get costs on both? Because I think that might sway people's thoughts.
I don't think that the cost would be substantially different between the first or the second.
Okay.
I think that when you get into the irrigation, I think that would probably, yeah.
We can ask for some preliminary costs, Mr. Mayor, through council, and put that out there as well, and also report back to council on that before any decisions are made.
Go ahead, Councillor.
So just on that, is that I have a sense that given the government's new attention on the accessibility and mobility, is that the more we include that, the more we might actually be eligible for grant projects. Just because they've got to fund it now that it's out there. So with this, so I'm wondering, although we've got gravel, what would happen is if we actually asked for a quote with it to also be paved? I suggest that to council for consideration.
I'm sure that the engineers could probably give us both options fairly simply.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. Councillor Matheson, you had a comment.
Yeah, I'm just curious, if we put this out to the public, we should have a good idea what the cost is going to be. I think that's pretty imperative to do that and get the feedback from it. And mirroring Councillor Sim's comments about accessibility and stuff, with that lower one in the Plan 2, I think that's one that we could put out. And if there's negligible cost between the first one and the second one, I would go with the second one. To me, the one with the irrigation is not something we should consider at this point, given water restrictions and everything else that's out there. To me, it just flies in the face of where we're headed.
And also just a note that there is funding set aside from the Trans Mountain Community Benefits Agreement towards this project, and 5 or 7 years ago, it might have covered the cost. I don't believe it will at this point, and that's why grant funding is important as well. But yes, I think putting it out to the public so the public gets a say in it, and then with some basic cost estimates would be useful so the public understands how much it's going to cost. I wouldn't be surprised if we get some donations from the public and to help this out as well. Okay, so does somebody want to make a motion that we direct staff to get basic cost estimates on one or more of these designs, design 2?
I'll make a motion that we get basic costs put out for Plan 2.
Actually, I think I got that probably wrong. We're gonna go with the 2 fully green plans and basic cost estimates. We put those 2 out, the one without irrigation, the 2 without irrigation, sorry, to the public for their comments. Okay, and you're making that motion? Thank you. Staff need clarification on that? Okay, Councilor McKenzie? Second that. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor? Let's send that out to the public for discussion. Thank you. Good discussion. Excellent work, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, we do.
What, 37 East doesn't,
Yeah.
This doesn't flow.
That one's getting old.
Okay, the next item of business is item 16.2. I'm gonna call a short adjournment after this one for 10 minutes, but we'll get through this one. The 2023 Emergency Response and Recovery Plan. There is a draft. It was included on your online package. I'm going to let staff speak to this. I believe that these are generally evolutions of previous plans, and it's a massive plan. It covers a lot of things. So Mr. Prime, I believe, will be speaking to this one. Go right ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Blackwell. So this report was originally done last May 2022, and it's just gone through a couple of revisions since then and some consultation with TNRD emergency program coordinators as well, just to ensure everything was good, as well as just sort of monitoring up and anticipating upcoming legislation changes. However, they continue to get pushed back, so we are did want to present this to council at this time. We do have good understanding that this is a great foundational document for when those legislation changes come anyway, and that it will be something to build on. Certainly more beneficial than our previous plan.
Questions? Go ahead, Councilor Herring.
Just reading the plan, I was hoping you'd give me a little bit of an update about where we're at with emergency social services in the plan. I know that was a service we were getting via the TNRD, but my understanding is it's all but collapsed locally due to that relationship with the TNRD. Is that still the case? What's going on with emergency social services?
We did have conversations with one of the general managers at TNRD about the ESS program. Matter of fact, the whole emergency response program, because the previous arrangement was the district was going to contribute 10,000 roughly in requisition on an annual basis, and the responsibility from TNRD, as I understand it, was for them to prepare and maintain the emergency response plan and the ESS program. In response to that, TNRD indicated it is true that the expectations were great and were not necessarily being met on an annual basis, but they did acknowledge that perhaps the district would want to use that 10,000 requisition annually for ESS exclusively. But that's where the discussion had gotten to, and no decision has been made on either side at this point.
Thank you. Further questions?
I just, my concern is this summer's going to happen. We're going to get somebody from somewhere is going to get evacuated, and they're going to pass through town. So I'm just wondering, are there people in place locally? Like if we needed to book hotels or a reception center for somebody who is evacuated, do we have people in town locally to do that?
My understanding is that there are 3 local members who are part of the ESS team, but they are still reporting to the TNRD rather than the District of Clearwater itself having its own ESS team.
Mm-hmm.
They do work out of the Centennial building.
Okay. Yeah. So they're still active though?
the last that I'm aware of, yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments or questions? Okay. If not, there's a recommendation that council adopts the 2023 Emergency Response and Recovery Plan as presented. Okay. Anybody want to move and second that? Thank you, Councillor Herring. Seconded by. Happy birthday. Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Yeah, just a comment. I've built emergency plans. This one's far more sophisticated than anything that I built. I think the biggest one I did was about 55 pages in BC Parks. They're an evolution, and they're always tested, and that's how you improve your plans, as well as watching what happened to other people. And I thank the staff for the tremendous amount of work on this. But yeah, as Councillor Herring suggests, there's always going to be one more thing. So thank you for the work, and thank you for continuing to consult with the TNRD and our other partners to ensure that we get a fulsome plan. All those in favor? Thank you. And can we just take let's go with a 5-minute recess to 3:15, and then we'll come back to Dutch Lake line painting, which will be a short, easy conversation. diagrams on your big sheets. And I'm sure those of us who did not attend in person will definitely have questions, and those that don't. Oh, there's larger diagrams over there on the easels as well, and then back here as well, so that you can get a better perspective. But I'm sure somebody from staff will speak to this. Sure.
Yes, Mayor Blackwell. I'll speak to this as I was there for the walkthrough. Where'd Roger go? The culmination of this is sort of the best compromise that the Trails Task Force, as well as council and staff, as well as engineers from TRU arrived on, and that was keeping the parking in the stretch from the Dutch Lake parking to 37 East and the walkway from the Dutch Lake parking up the hill, as well as separating that with curb stops so that it was made obvious that that was not for parking, as well as including parking stalls painted on the roadway for the parking to make that clear. That would also be delineated with plastic delineators on the pavement edge to stop parking along the gravel portions, which would be a de facto pathway, though not a designated pathway at this time.
Okay. Questions or thoughts on this one? I think this is Plan 2. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Herring.
Are there any impacts to the original grant funding from this project by this trail redesign?
The impact would be approximately 16,000, if I understood that correctly, from the original line painting exercise. The district has expended that fund already, and I don't know if the province is going to request it paid back, but that's where we are at the moment.
Thank you. I thought that was where you're going. Further comments or questions? Okay.
I think that it was a great exercise to walk through it with the Trails Task Force team as well as staff. I can never tell on these small maps what's what, but the most important thing is that the lane widths are now 3.5 meters, which returns it to the way it was. So it has that. There was a lot of discussion around sort of speed zones. There was also discussion about how that this plan is not perfect. And it doesn't achieve everything. The more expensive plan that had been brought forward earlier, what was that, 185,000?
There were several plans. Some were 600,000.
Right.
The one that was closest was approximately 160,000. And that included paving of the section between the parking lot and 37 East. That was kind of the largest that was removed.
Yeah, so one of the thoughts that had been expressed there is that if we move forward with this plan, but then we have almost a shelf-ready plan to move forward, and it could tie into 37 East, and it does tie into that accessibility thing that we were talking about the last one, and the government just announced $3.6 million in March that was going to go for accessible parks and trails. So maybe we might have an opportunity at that. The Trails Task Force people were keen on it, and I only suggest it because we've got plans. It's not creating anything new, it's enhancing what's there, but I don't know if anybody had any thoughts on that or other questions or comments.
Further comments or thoughts, questions? The only concern as somebody who's run a lot of parking lots is the wheel stops along the next to a lane of traffic. Am I reading that right? Yeah. So that one, I would be much more happy with the bolt-in orange posts, even if you put 1,000 of the damn things, or full-size parking dividers. I really do risk wheel hits and public complaints on that, and it's not going over well in Vancouver, but I'm willing to give this one a shot and see how it works.
I think it's important that we wait for Mr. Mayor on that one because that was a conversation that had a lot of dialogue. So that perspective wasn't brought up. So maybe Mr. Mayor has some thoughts.
So specific to the wheel stop placement along the, what was the conversation about having the wheel stops, the small parking barriers along the lane of traffic? Was there a conversation with engineers or?
Yes, the intent was to keep traffic off the walkway and and that was the intent for the wheel stops.
Thank you.
So Mayor Blackwell had just been saying that his concern might be for any larger vehicles, if they don't see it, is that they might go over it, and that might be an intended hazard.
Or even, go ahead, Mr. Prime.
Yes, sorry. One of the issues that arose that True Engineering did bring up when we were talking about full-size concrete barriers was the necessity to have them actually have railings as cyclists, if they do impact them, can go over the concrete barriers, whereas this wasn't necessarily a challenge with the parking curb.
Thank you. That makes sense. I mean, we're as mentioned, this isn't the perfect plan for anything, but I think it's a development up. Councillor Herring, you look like you want to put up your hand. No. Okay. Councillor Sim, anything further?
Yeah, just to make sure that, you know, and I never know how we stage these things, so not to create downloads or anything, but it's exciting to see the work with 37 East. Is there an appetite to blend these projects and to look at ways that we can finance it so it's the best option for all?
You. One, we need to get the lines painted, so let's get the lines painted.
And that's
in this
exactly
pattern
it.
with this, and then we'll have to look at the grant opportunities, but we also have capacity issues, and there's going to be more we're going to have to talk about capacity issues in camera and other things. But yeah, I could see how the two could align, but at this particular point, let's get this one done with an eye on how would it impact 37 East.
100%, and everybody was in agreement that nobody wanted to look at anything until 2024 or beyond. So that was a very clear discussion, and everybody was happy to get this going. The other thing that, and I don't know if we've had an answer back from the engineers, but there's that weird kind of bulb in the road, and it's supposedly Ministry of Transportation demand. It's the one where the line's at the top, and you have to go around, and then you come back, almost in the exact same line where you're traveling.
Yeah, what was that?
Pardon me?
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
I believe that they were going to try and soften that so it didn't
That's exactly it.
quite
Thank
come
you.
out as far. And the other thing that will happen now too is because the walking path is going to continue from there, so it won't go out and back in. It will just jog out into the lane and move traffic over.
Right, that's good. Yeah, I like that.
Yes, it would blend more. And I don't know if we need to have this discussion now, but the engineers, and I think also council, was looking at how we establish, you know, how do we proceed with the communication rollout. There was great success when we had the one down at Raft River because there had been lots of community engagement. And I think one of the things we learned from last time is that all of a sudden everything just changed. So I don't know if staff has comments on how we're going to help inform the public on this round.
I'm not sure about informing the public, but I think it's really important when the lines are painted, the signage goes up immediately.
Yeah.
Last summer, signage didn't go up for several weeks, and people were completely confused about where they were supposed to go. So I think we need to coordinate the line painting and the signage installation.
I like that.
Thank you. Do we have maybe to Mr. Prime or Mr. Thomas, do we have time to slide a version of this plan into the
We will
newsletter?
work with the comms officer to have something in place specifically for Dutch Lake Night.
Yeah, I was thinking we'd put it in the newsletter, but then I actually just rethought that in my head and thought this needs to be online so people can expand it out and understand what's going on.
I have a question.
Councillor Bratton and then Councillor Sim.
When is this happening? Do we know that?
Line painting schedule is probably tentative at this point.
We don't have a date for this as yet. We are at a Class D estimate right now on this particular project.
Okay.
And so we have to go back to the engineer and say, yes, council has agreed with this design. Please provide issue for construction drawing. That takes it from Class D to A actually. And then we could procure that service to a contractor, and then they could develop a schedule, and then we'll be able to communicate that outwardly.
So theoretically, August-ish?
If no other
End of summer?
emergency or anything else happen, it is possible, but we'll have to report back.
So that leads to the next question. We have line painting for the rest of the community scheduled here in the near future, I'm assuming?
I will have to check with the director of operation, but I believe yes.
They will happen concurrently.
Okay, so we will still have this section of road painted with some sort of traffic lines, even though the full project is not yet? Or are we waiting till
If
August?
this plan is approved, yes. The intention from the Director of Operations was to have these lines painted concurrently with the remainder and throughout the community. And we were just waiting on a date from the company that he was requesting a quote from, just as to their availability. So assuming council approves the plan, then the line painting would happen at the same time as the rest of town.
Okay, thank you. Further comments or questions?
Yeah, I think the engineer, they were quite keen to expedite this, and so it's
I'm
everybody's
getting that.
working in the same direction, which is nice. Is there any possibility, or is there any reason to put these plans up laminated at Dutch Lake with, you know, coming soon, or is that maybe not an articulate enough design for people?
Thoughts?
It's a good idea. Let me work with the comms person
Excellent,
and come
thank
up
you.
with a plan, and we will make sure everyone's aware.
Yeah, I think that to that, I think it needs an opportunity for feedback with it, or a two-way conversation, not just a plan. Okay, thank you. There is a recommendation that council approve the proposed design and principle and direct staff to execute the plan, and that council direct staff to amend the 2023 to 2027 5-year financial plan and allocate funding for this project from unrestricted surplus. Does anybody wish to move that? Moved and seconded, Councillor Frizzle and Matheson. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Noted opposed, Councillor Herring. Okay, moving on to bylaws. Hey, bylaws. There is a recommendation that zoning amendment bylaw number 270, 2023 be adopted. What is the desire of council?
I'll move that zoning amendment bylaw number 270, 2023 be adopted.
Thank you. Seconder? Seconded by Councillor Matheson. Discussion? Okay.
Oh, I'm gonna just say, I'm just gonna note just that I won't be voting in favor of it. I think we really missed it for the zoning stage, is where we could have had some more input in terms of density and some things. But thank you.
Okay, thanks. Noted. District of Clearwater bylaw number 270, 2023, a bylaw to amend District of Clearwater zoning bylaw number 133, whereas an application number RZ 2202 for amendment of zoning bylaw number 133 has been made, and whereas the desirable changes in uses of land have been considered, and whereas the zoning amendment conforms to the District of Clearwater official community plan, now therefore the Council of the District of Clearwater in open meeting assembles and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as District of Clearwater bylaw number 133, amendment bylaw number 270 adopted. Thank you. All those in favor? And that passes. Opposed?
Yeah, and I'll have my vote.
Noted.
Noted, voted, I oppose. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to Committee of the Whole. There is a recommendation that the council enter a Committee of the Whole meeting of the Committee of the Whole, Economic Development and Infrastructure Standing Committee. Somebody
Moved.
please. Moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Bratton. All those in favor? And I turn the chair over. Is it which Councillor
Councillor
Sim?
Sim.
Fly away, Councillor Sim.
Great. Well, we have a one-item agenda, the staff report on the Old Thompson Clearwater River Bridge repairs.
Yes, the District of Clearwater received a grant from UBCM to conduct flood mitigation studies to assess areas in floodplains that may be at risk for both the North Thompson and Clearwater rivers. Shortly after that project started, they identified a concern with the Clearwater River Bridge just near the RCMP building as having concern with the riprap below the bridge. And if those areas are not addressed, the risk of bridge failure increases over time, especially during freshet when the river levels are traditionally high with very fast moving water. At this point, the report from TRU dated May 12th came forward to us, which caused us to activate our Emergency Operations Center. We did start our preliminary process to find riprap and equipment and operator to do some interim repairs. However, since the threat of bridge failure has by and large subsided or passed because the river level has decreased, staff is seeking direction on how council wants to approach resolving this bridge concern in a future budget year, perhaps before freshet hits in 2024.
Councillor, are there questions?
Yes, I have one. If I
Mayor
get to ask a
Blackwell?
question, thank you. I'm noting in the past discussions on this that the actual abutments in the river need reinforcement. Is that correct? Or extra riprap, the ones that are center river.
Extra riprap for sure. Yes.
Yeah. And knowing that working in water requires a long permitting process, I'm assuming we need to, if we were to take action on this, it's going to be a multi-year project.
I'm not sure if it's going to be multi-year, but it will certainly require at least a Section 11 working in and about a stream, and perhaps other permitting processes from the Ministry of Forests, Land, and Natural Resources.
Thank you.
Councillor Herring?
Yeah, I'm really in favor of this proceeding, if nothing else, just to get a price tag on this. This is an infrastructure debt, essentially, right? That has to be paid at some point. So just getting a handle on the value that we need to be planning for the next 5-year plan is, I think, essential. The faster we can do this, the better.
Are there other questions? I just have a question. What would an asset management plan look like?
The traditional approach to an asset management plan is to, one, do an assessment of all your assets, whether it be tangible or intangible, linear or not. Do condition assessments so you understand where they are in their asset life cycle. And further to that, do an assessment on replacement value or replacement cost. That's the traditional way. The recommended approach would include an asset management program, which looks at all of those things that I mentioned earlier, but also an institutionalized approach to storing that information and using that information in preventative maintenance, responsive maintenance, budget planning. Because today, if we had, as a concern a few weeks ago, May 12th, we had concerns that this bridge may have shifted, which, one, interrupts water service to Sunshine Valley, and if there is any telecommunication infrastructure beneath that bridge, also potentially disrupts that as well. Understanding those risks should not be a surprise in an asset management plan. And my concern is here, we do have an asset management program. The state of it is something that I think council should look at in the near future. And along with the work Director of Finance Klassen is doing with Questica, we should have a separate program that tracks how much we're spending on assets that we have in terms of maintenance or responsive or reactive maintenance activities, that tracks our ongoing labor costs, that tracks our replacement value, and projects that out so that the municipality is not surprised.
So supplemental to that, do you think that there is any advantage or capacity or ability for the district to apply for the UBCM asset management grant?
I don't think so at this time for a couple of reasons. Primarily because of the UBCM asset management survey that they sent out to all municipalities. The survey for the District of Clearwater was completed in and around 2016. A follow-up one was completed in and around either early of 2023 or late 2022. And the update that we recently provided would certainly make UBCM concerned in terms of where we stand. and our readiness to implement a program. I think we have a lot of foundational work that we need to do, beginning with reviewing our existing asset management policy, strategy, plan, and all the associated documentation that we have in place.
So with that, so you think that they would have concern because we've got too much deficiency at this point?
That's correct.
But would the plan, if we got one in place, would that assist us with future funding, or that's not your professional advice right now?
The plan that we have in place is dated.
Yeah.
And so our reliance on a dated plan may give a grant funding agency concern about that. So if we address the plan, make sure it's aligned with where we want to go, then they might be inclined with giving you money to complete other portions of that project.
Okay. It's a really tough one because we seem to have so many, and if it was a question that we needed assistance updating our plan, was this the time to raise it? Because we would have that comprehensive, because I think we're going to go forward with some large decisions. And if we had an updated one, but you've noted some problems. The good news is that if anything changes over the summer, I think we've got a September opportunity too.
I think we're at chicken egg omelet in this discussion.
I don't want
right
any
now.
onions.
No onions. Yes, cheese and mushrooms. I go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, of course.
I think a good place to start would be for staff to bring forward the 2016 and most recent asset management survey results to UBCM so that council is aware of where the district is at this point in time. Following which, have a review of the current asset management plan, strategy, and policy, and maybe condense where you see opportunities to do so.
I think that you had also had an idea of the fact that our infrastructure master plan, and you wanted to see an alignment of some of these plans. And I guess really, do you need council direction at this point in time, or is that to bring forward with what you're suggesting?
They're all part of a bigger picture. The work that was recently done on updating the infrastructure master plan was done, if I may, in isolation, because we do have an existing infrastructure master plan from Urban Systems, and the recent work was done by True Consulting. The first priority I would recommend is for the district to amalgamate those plans together, to have one plan rather than two. Following that, the additional work about assessing the rest of our infrastructure, because the information we have from 2016, 17, 18, when the asset management plan was done and the strategy was done, is perhaps dated at this point as well.
Okay, so I'll ask Mayor Blackwell what your thoughts are, if you feel that there's any need to move forward or anything right now, or we just hold course and wait for that report to come back and then make steadiness.
I'll go with Mr. Thomas's first suggestion, which is just let's have a review of the surveys so we understand fully what we're talking about. But yes, I do feel urgency on this. I just also realize that getting our financial house with Questica underway, I think, is pretty important to how we do asset management. So let's get the two surveys, have a look at those, maybe review what we have, and then let's have another conversation about that in a meeting or two.
Yeah, I think that probably the most important impression is that council wants to move forward, but in a steady fashion that is responsible and helps us address some of our needs. And all those costs are outdated, so that's the other thing that we face too.
And
Mayor Blackwell?
On this particular issue that we're talking about, which is the item agenda, the bridge repairs, there's a urgency to this that would go beyond an asset management plan. We need to start looking for funding for this now, or we're going to self-fund, but I really don't think with the fluctuations in water levels and other things that we're seeing, we can't risk that bridge.
No, I completely agree. I look at the siphon as well and feel the same urgency. So I didn't know if this is the time to draw it together, but I think we've got a plan. Councillor Herring?
Yeah, I just wanted to move the recommendation that the Community and Economic Development and Infrastructure Standing Committee recommend council direct staff to obtain a Class B cost estimate for the necessary repairs.
Do I have a seconder?
Second that.
Councillor McKenzie, any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.
You get the next one as well.
There's a next one? I thought we had one. To move out of the camera?
Yep. You get to say it because I can't say it.
Oh, well, motion to move out of committee.
You of the whole.
So, seconded by Councillor Bratton.
All those
All
in
those
favor?
in favor? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sim. Correspondence information only. Letter to Minister of Housing from the District of Coldstream. There are no notices of motion.
Oh, does anybody want to address that letter from Coldstream?
Yeah, if you want to talk about it, sure.
Well, only because Councillor Herring and I we attended that housing conference, and that was one of the big topics, especially for the rural component, is that it does put smaller communities, and we hear about it all the time. Is in order to access grant opportunities, it's a staff time. There's no guarantees for it the way that the government has. So I didn't know if we wanted to tap onto that letter or just thank Coldstream for their efforts.
Councillor Herring, do you have a thought on that?
I mean, my take is, yeah, we definitely want infrastructure funding on that. I think they're aware at the province. So I'm fine voting for this at UBCM kind of thing as a resolution, but I'm not sure we need a letter of support because when they did that word cloud, remember the survey tool, the word that got bigger and bigger was the word mentioned the most, and that was infrastructure. You just saw it grow out of the background immediately. So I think they're aware.
They are aware. I think what I liked about this one was the special attention on the smaller communities and the need to support grant writing. So it was a specific component. Yes, infrastructure is going to get it, but even with those 47 communities that are on the naughty list, you know, they have to go in priority of larger, larger, larger. And yet we will also have some pressing nerds. So anyway, maybe we could just address it to Silga and just
Make a motion to forward this to Silga, or do you want to make a motion to thank District of Coldstream and send them a letter of support, or you could make a motion that we basically copy this letter and send it off to Minister Keough.
I would like to copy the letter, and I'd like to make a motion to copy the letter and send it off to the minister.
So edit it to meet Clearwater versus Coldstream and send it off to the minister. Anybody else comments on that?
With a CC to Southern Interior Local Government.
I agree with that in principle because I think it does touch the need that we are overwhelmed with the number of things we are responsible for. I would support that motion, but I can't second.
Do I have a seconder?
Thank you. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor? Thank you. There we go. Information just became action. No notices of motion. Public questions. Are there comments? Annabelle. On the main highway?
Been happening a few times.
Thank you. I will add that list to the rest of the stories that I have. Thank you.
And another thing is with this Dutch Lake line taking, I don't know, Marilyn, if you want to put it in the paper, the newsletter, because a bunch of us don't go online.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm all for the line taking.
Yeah.
That highway is getting scary.
It is.
And I heard something on the news, we were at Tourisim, we went to lunch, and I heard something about Kathy and her husband, Brad. That's all I heard.
Yeah. Thank you. Further comments from the public or online? Do we have anything online?
Yes, we do have one comment from Director Sao, which was previously during the YCS presentation. Thank you. Would you like me to read it out?
If you could.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, councillors and mayor. Sorry, not sure if I'm part of the question period for the YCS housing project, but does Modi have any input on expanding that road connecting from the roundabout? Once the new expansion is done, there will be the clinic, the high school, sportsplex, and the mall and warehouse or subdivision that will be funneling traffic into the same street to gain access to the highway. Just a thought if Modi can be asked to maybe add more access roads to the highway for that area. Thank you.
Yes, good question. And Modi is always consulted, and I think anything within 500 meters, something half a kilometer of the main highway. So they will be part of the approval process. Seeing no further questions, we need to move in camera. There is a recommendation that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91C, F, and K of the community charter. Do we need to add any other sections into that to deal with personnel, or is that covered under those?
I think that question is for Councillor Sim. Does it fall under
Is it
matters related to labor relations and other employee relations? Or is it a separate one?
It would be related to discussions about a profession that, if discussed in public, could be damaging. So I think that I read it to be under a possible employee.
Possible employee? Okay. So contract. Do you need a moment to figure? We can take an adjournment right now. Or do you two need to step into my office to discuss for clarification? Okay, so it's in this one then. Yeah, I've got it still. Yeah, K is on the list. So that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 91C, F, and K of the community charter to discuss matters relating to labor relations or other employee relations, law enforcement, if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the conduct of the investigation or other enforcement of an enactment, and negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of municipal service that are at their preliminary stages and that, in the view of council, could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. Can I get a mover and a seconder on that? Moved by Councillor Bratton, seconded by Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor? It is now 3:48. I'm going to call it till probably 4. We need to shut some things down, and I need another drink of water. So see you at 4 o'clock. Thank you.